So let's talk about the installed height of the springs. The clutch springs have an installed height, and at that height they apply a certain load, or it's defined as the preload. Okay. If you make the installed height shorter, the preload goes up. If the installed height is taller, the preload goes down. And that's one of the problems with clutch wear, is as the clutch discs, the fiber discs, wear down, these spring posts that the springs are around start to move up, to the right actually. The clutch sits in the engine like this, and as the clutch wears, the pressure disc here starts to move this direction, which because the spring posts are part of the pressure discs, they're also moving this direction. And since this release plate is attached to the spring posts, it's moving to the right. And as it moves to the right, it takes the push rod with it, and everything is getting closer and closer to the release cam. And eventually, all the free play is taken up, and then the release cam starts to prevent the clutch from pinching the discs. But another thing that's occurring at the same time is as the spring posts get longer, the springs are getting longer, and it's reducing the preload. So there's less spring force to clamp the clutch together. So when you build up a clutch, one of the things you should be interested in is the preload on the springs, and that preload is determined by the spring post height. Okay? So we know that all the discs, the fiber discs and the metal plates, all the plates, the fiber plates and the metal plates in this clutch assembly, this clutch pack, are in spec, within factory spec for new stuff. Okay? If you take and you have this clutch assembly, this clutch pack assembly, and the wave washer is installed, you need at least 2 springs to collapse the wave washer all the way. So never do this check unless you have at least 2 springs, but preferably 3 springs compressing everything together. Okay? Now you want to measure the height of that spring post in relation to the hub. So you want to measure from the spring seat right here up to the top of the spring post. Okay? I can use a caliper to pick up that measurement. Just place it on there like that. Slide it down until it touches. Lock it. And let's take a look and see what we got here. Looks like it's just shy of 29 millimeters. Okay? Maybe 28.5. Let's try it again. Okay, just shy of 29 millimeters. That's how far that spring post is sticking up. And you can see, if the spring is placed on there, the spring is taller, right? The spring is taller than the spring post. And so when you put the release plate on it and bolt everything up, it's going to collapse that spring. It's going to crush the spring, compress the spring. You might say to 29 millimeters, but not really, because there's sockets in the release plate. So that post goes into this socket, this relief right here, okay? And the spring is actually contacting this surface here, not this surface. So you're going to lose some of that spring height. The spring is going to compress a little further than 29 millimeters. So you want to measure the depth of this to determine how much further it's going to compress, how much more than 29 millimeters it's going to compress. 2 millimeters. So actually, the installed height is going to be 27 millimeters, not 29. Now, I provided you guys with plots of the 3 different springs that I think are usable in here. And it's the Barnett springs, the stock springs, and the DR650 springs. And you can use those plots to determine how much force the springs are applying at the installed height. So we're looking at installed height right about 27 millimeters on this thing, on this stock clutch. And if my memory serves me right, that's about 55, 56 pounds of force for each spring. So you're looking at somewhere around 220 pounds of force total for the 4 springs. So you don't necessarily have to check this installed height. If all your parts are in as new condition, you should have right around 27 millimeters installed height. The spring post should protrude or stick up above the spring socket in the hub about 29 millimeters. 2 more millimeters of compression resulting from the socket in the release plate. You end up with about 27 millimeters of installed height, and as I mentioned, that should work out to somewhere around 55, 56 pounds of force per each spring, give or take a pound or 2, I'm not sure. So if you have all new parts or parts that measure out in compliance with the new part specs that are provided in the manual, you should end up with about 27 millimeters of installed height. The spring post should stick up above the socket 29 millimeters, and right here we'll line this up with 29 millimeters, and that's just a tad over 1.1 inches. Okay, hopefully that reference will help you guys out when you're working on your clutch, help you determine if you have the correct spring force. If you have brand new springs, especially if you're using genuine Suzuki springs, which I recommend, I wouldn't use any of the aftermarket stuff. Now with that weak release cam, you should have about 1.1 inches sticking up out of there. Okay,